Hi, this is Jeff Heaton. Okay, let's install TensorFlow Keras with full GPU support on Windows 11. Now we're going to install this low level using no Anaconda shortcuts. We're going to use Anaconda, Miniconda, but we're not going to use the pre-built version that they have. It's often several versions behind of TensorFlow and sometimes causes me issues. This is how I install it on my own computer. We're going to use Windows, like I said, and we're going to just take you through each of the steps. I have the steps lined out in this video, and then I also have a markdown file that gives you all the copy and paste goodness to go along with it. I'm trying to make this video age well, so don't necessarily just copy everything from the video, copy it from the markdown. Let's get started. So to perform this install, I'm going to use really two installation guides. Now this may change as of the point that you're doing this. They upgrade versions pretty frequently in both CUDA and CuDNN space, but we'll talk about what might change as we go through it. And there's several different ways that you can go about this. So I want you to follow this, not exactly keystroke, but learning really what's going on here and what we're going to actually do. Now, we are going to install CUDA and CuDNN and all of these separately. There is a much easier way that you can go about this, where you have Anaconda actually manage this for you. That's good and it's bad. The problem is you don't always have the latest of everything. Anaconda tends to stay a bit far behind. So this is how you install the latest and greatest of everything and keep it up to date, because now you know how these individual components work. So I'm going to be following the TensorFlow installation guide, and that will get very quickly into the CUDA installation guide, also for Windows. But before we do any of that, I am going to install the latest NVIDIA GPU driver for my particular card. And you have to put in the type of a card that you actually have. For me, I have a Ampere. They treat it essentially as a Quadro. It's an RTX series, and I do have the A6000, so it's a pretty high-end card. And we want Windows 11 because I am running Windows 11. Download type. We'll do the production. That tends to be the safest. And we'll go ahead and search for that. And here it is. So we'll go ahead and download it. And it's now downloading the latest driver for this. We'll go ahead and fast forward through this because this takes a moment. Okay, it's downloaded. Let's go ahead and run it. And by the way, you notice at the bottom there's the 472.84. That is the actual driver that we're installing. For the video driver, you really just want the latest. Some of the others, you will have some constraints based on TensorFlow and other things. So specify where you want it. Doesn't matter. I accept the default on that. It's installing. Now I'm literally changing my low-level video driver and screencasting at the same time. What could possibly go wrong? We'll see. Okay, let's agree and continue. Express is good. Okay, it's installing the graphics driver. This might knock out my recording if it hasn't already. I do like to reboot the computer after the graphics driver has changed, so I'll be restarting my recording anyway. And there goes my screen all dark. Okay, and we're back, and it tells me status installed. So this is good. Now I'm going to stop my recording and reboot. Okay, so the next thing that we need to install, according to the installation guide, is Visual Studio. And we need to install Visual Studio Community. I haven't done 2022 yet. What could possibly go wrong? So let's go ahead and install Visual Studio Community 2022. If you paid for one of those highly expensive versions, you can certainly install those as well, I believe. Before you get started, you need to set up a few things. Okay, so pre-install. All right. Microsoft gives you the whole list of things that they would like you to install. Unfortunately, it doesn't match at all with what you need for CUDA. So individual components, .NET, we don't want anything to, does anybody use .NET anymore? Cloud, Code Tools, C++. I remember when C++ was all I used Visual Studio for. You probably do not need all of the C++ stuff. But there it is. I'll put MS Build in there. I don't think we need this old compatibility stuff. And I'll install my own Python. Thank you very much, Microsoft. Yeah, I think that's mainly what you need. So I'm going to go ahead and click. Amazingly, that still takes a whopping 14 gigabytes. Gotta love Microsoft. So let's go ahead and install this. That kind of scares me. No workloads. I like doing my own stuff. So we're installing. I'm going to go ahead and fast forward through this. Hopefully I got that install right. If not, I'll edit and fix it. I feel like for my computer, this is more of a marriage than an install. So this is going to take a while. So let's fast forward. And by the way, the reason that we need the C++ installer is not even so much the C++ installer, but the C installer. CUDA is all based on C99, and you need a C compiler to compile those CUDA kernels. And Windows lacks, by default, a decent C compiler. Like in Linux or in Mac, you just go to the command prompt and it's GCC. So this is why you need to install Visual Studio. So with Visual C++, it gives you not a decent C++ compiler, but at least a C++ compiler. And it works well for what it's intended. And it looks like it's installing .NET anyway. It just can't help itself. All right, Visual Studio is successfully installed. Okay, this is an often overlooked step. You need to run VCVARs. Make sure you go to this PC C program files, assuming that's where you have your program files. Go into Visual Studio, go into the version 2022, Community, VC, Auxiliary, Build, and then VCVAR 64. So let me copy that path, and I'm going to open a command prompt. I could just double click it and run it from there, but I want to see if there's any errors. So VCVARs 64, run that. Good, success. So now you'll be able to find the C compiler when you run CUDA. So now we're going to install CUDA, specifically the CUDA toolkit. We're going to use version 11.5 of CUDA. You definitely want to use CUDA 11. CUDA 11.2, we should be able to use the latest. You certainly wouldn't want to use anything before that. And if you're using an Ampere GPU, you don't want 10. It'll run very, very slow. So we're going to install Linux. I can only dream. Windows. And then we'll do version 11 of Windows. Let's do exe local. Let's get everything. 2.4 gigabytes. We'll fast forward through this download. Okay, CUDA is downloaded, so let's go ahead and run it. Yes. Okay, we'll let it extract to that location. Okay, I will agree and continue. We'll do Express. I understand. We'll fast forward through this part. Okay, now it's in the actual installation process, which we will fast forward as well. Okay, it's interacting with the graphics driver, so we'll see what this does to my recording. So you'll see some screen flickering as this part goes through. Kind of unavoidable. I'm not going to look at the samples. All right, now you have CUDA installed. The next step is CuDNN. Now, if you want to download CuDNN, you do have to have an NVIDIA account. It's completely free, but you do have to log in, unfortunately, to get this. So I'm going to agree to the terms, and we are going to download CuDNN for CUDA 11.5. Make sure that matches the CUDA that you just installed. And you could get archived versions if you needed to go old school. Local installers for Windows, blah, 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 blah. Let's see. So here is Windows, and it's a zip file. So we're going to download this. This does not have a fancy install program like some of the other ones do. So what I'm going to do is go back to the TensorFlow install page, because I'm going to need to unzip this into a directory. I'm going to go ahead and copy these, and I'm going to open up a really advanced text editor. You can use something less full-featured if you want. Paste this into here. If we go back to here, it is still downloading. We'll fast forward through those last 2 minutes. So here you can see when I open that file that I just downloaded, CuDNN, it's basically just a folder. So I'm going to create a tools, and then in there, I am going to then put in this really hairy named folder. Let that go ahead and decompress. And now we need to get these paths into our environmental variables. You could run these actual commands that they give you there. That's not the Windows way to do it. The Windows way is more using the GUI. I bet there's scripted ways you can do this as well, but you go to environmental variables. Boy, this looks so old school, even on Win 11. I remember this back in Windows 95, I think. So let's go ahead, and you can see some of these environmental variables have been put in already from CUDA, but we need to put certain things in the path. So if we go down to the path, and I am going to do this at a system level, you could really almost do this. And this is where Windows, I mean, it used to be you could copy this whole thing in one stroke. They just do not like automation in Windows. So let's go ahead and deal with these one by one then, since that's how you do it. So we can see some of these are already in here. Programming files, toolkit 11.5 bin. So that first one is already there. So let's use that as a starting point and get the include one into here. So let's go ahead and open this main part just so that we can see it. This is me making sure that all these paths are correct. So there you go. There's your CupTI. And then the other one that you're going to, so now we have CupTI, and then you need the include, which has all your header files. If you've ever done C++. All right. So now we have all of those. And then the one that we need is this bottom one, which is where CuDNN, I mean, comes from, which is this, and this. Put that in. And then why not? I'm going to put the include in. Anyway, it's not calling for that, but I've certainly had to put that in the past. So these four all need to be added. In older versions of Windows, you could just add them, put them all in one line and paste them in. But now I guess we have to do it like this. Put that one in, that one in, that one in, and that one in. All right. Now our environmental variables are set. We should be good now as far as low-level CUDA is concerned. So next step, we're going to continue really now following my installation guide. We're going to install Miniconda or Anaconda. It's your choice. Anaconda has everything in the world. It's huge. Not huge by Microsoft standards, but still huge. Miniconda has lean just what you need. I like Miniconda, so I'm going to get that. But if you want to use Anaconda and install everything in the kitchen sink, then you can certainly install it at this step. So we're on Windows 64-bit. I'm going to go ahead and download that. It's downloading the latest, which has Python 3.9, which is what we'll use. We'll go ahead and run this. We'll click Next, Agree. Just me is fine. I usually try to accept the defaults on these. User Jeff H. Miniconda, so be aware that's where it's going to be at. That's going to be an important directory later on. This one you can choose. I like to live dangerously. If you've got old legacy software out there that's using older versions of Python, that could break some stuff. If you don't do this, then you've got to always run the Anaconda prompt to launch things instead of your command prompt in Windows. This, I just set them both. So you don't have to install that first click, and we'll do install. And now we're installing Miniconda. If you're doing Anaconda, you're still waiting for the half-hour download or so. It might not be that bad, depending on your internet connection. So we've downloaded it. Yeah, I don't need no tutorials, nor do I want to know how to get started. And finish. You can install those if you want. It won't hurt anything. So now we have Miniconda installed, or Anaconda. You should now have something called an Anaconda prompt. And if you launch your Anaconda prompt, you can just do Python /version. You really should be seeing whatever you just downloaded. Since I clicked that dangerous checkbox, I can now go to PowerShell, and I should be able to type Python minus version. Why does it make version hard to read? And you should get the same thing. So that is how that works. If you did not click the dangerous checkbox, this probably is still defaulting to whatever your system Python was. So the first thing we're going to do is install Jupyter. And we're going to install Jupyter in our root environment, our base environment. See here where it says base. But first we install Jupyter, and we're installing it into the base environment. We're going to create another environment. I don't like using the base environment for much. You can install this all into the base environment, but the problem with that is if you install something new, I like to use an experimental area, something like that, but let's just go ahead and do this. This takes a moment, so I'm going to fast forward through this. All right, now we have Jupyter Notebooks. You can also put Jupyter Lab. That is really kind of becoming the preferred environment, and I'll probably flip my class over to Jupyter Lab at some point, but this is how you just install base Jupyter. I do keep Jupyter as the main environment for my class because it very closely mirrors Colab, which a lot of the students use. So now if you just want to verify that's running, just do Jupyter Notebook. You'll see your notebook launch, and wonderful. So let's go ahead, break out of that. Next thing we want to do is create our own custom environment. And to do that, we're going to use this command. So now we're creating our TensorFlow environment. Now on Windows, it is extremely important that you do this activate TensorFlow. On other operating systems, you can just launch Jupyter and swap around environments as you like. Windows, for some reason, they just can't get that to work. Anaconda. So you have to do conda activate TensorFlow. And now see, we're in the TensorFlow environment. So now we're going to run this command. All this does is just hooks my newly created TensorFlow environment into Jupyter Notebook so that it can find it as a kernel. Make sure you're in the TensorFlow environment. Oh, and if you do get this, no module named ipykernel, I'm doing things in the wrong order, I will add this command to my little step-by-step guide. But if you run that first, I mean, just run this. It's going to add ipykernel. Yes, that is good. Now we can run the Python ipykernel install, blah, 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 blah. And now it's in there. So what that gave you is if you go into Jupyter Notebook and you decide to create a new notebook, there's that TensorFlow one that we just added. So that's basically doing that for you. Okay, we're going to break out of that again. I'm just doing Control-C. Now we need to install TensorFlow. For this, I'm going to do pip install TensorFlow. I'm mixing pip and conda, but pip is going to get me the latest and greatest TensorFlow. You could do double equal and tie this to a version. You might need to do this, but I'm going to do just latest and greatest. So I will press enter. It's going to do a bunch of stuff. You can see it's downloading TensorFlow 2.7, which briefly scared me because I thought of Python 2.7, but it's pulling that down. This does take, and this will support GPU since we have all of this other stuff installed. At least that's the goal. All right, now we have that. Before we try anything in Jupyter, let's just go ahead and try this from Python. So I'm just going to do Python. And again, make sure you're in TensorFlow. And we'll do import TensorFlow as TF. I'll also have this for copy and paste in my guide. And then do print tf dot underbar version. Underbar. 2.7. Beautiful. Now let's see if the GPU works. This is where you cross your fingers. All right, we're going to paste that command in. This will let us know if there is a GPU available or not. True. This is where kind of the heavenly music plays and you're happy. If you're like a lot of people, judging from the comments, this is where you get a false. By the way, one video I've thought of putting together is installing TensorFlow, except everything goes wrong, where I literally reproduce each of the bad things that can happen. What is most likely happening right here, if you're seeing faults, is you're seeing some lines pop up and it's telling you can't find DLL, this, that, or the next. And that's because you have one of those paths messed up. So if that's going wrong, if you're in DLL hell, just go back to those environmental variables. Edit environmental variables. Go to the old school Windows 95. Go to your path. There it is. And all of these paths that you added, just go to these guys one by one, copy them. Go to a command prompt. And just one by one, dir, and paste them in. Make sure those exist. That is the best way to interrogate those. And if they have spaces in them, do dir with quotes around them. Look for that kind of stuff. Invariably, one of those will fail if you're getting DLL not found. Now, if you want to see this work in Jupyter, let's quit out of Python and do Jupyter Notebook. We'll just create a new one. 3.9 TensorFlow. Import TensorFlow as TF. Print tf.version. And then let's do that. Let's do that len thingy that I like to use to test the GPU. There we go. Let's run this mess. And it should say the version number and true. So the GPU is now functional inside of Jupyter. Thank you for watching this video. Now you've got this GPU. What are you going to do with it? Watch the rest of the videos on my channel, subscribe, get the latest, and you'll find out, because I cover all the latest things on machine learning, artificial intelligence, and deep learning. Thank you for watching.